Welcome to Growing Golf, presented by Syngenta. This month we're talking to Jonathan Smith. Jonathan is the founder and executive director of the GEO Foundation for Sustainable Golf. While studying geography at the University of St Andrews, he became interested in environmental matters, eventually combining his sporting passion and professional expertise. Today, GEO certified courses, developments and tournaments are recognised for their benefits to the environment and local people. Jonathan says, golf courses are living landscapes that provide for both nature and communities. Jonathan Smith, welcome to Growing Golf.
Nice to see you, Gary. Thanks for inviting me.
Jonathan, there are many different definitions of sustainability, but give us the 101. What is sustainability?
Well, I think in the world now, there have been definitions of sustainability over the last 20, 30 years, looking after the needs of today without compromising the needs of tomorrow, those kinds of things. I think for us, it's about being more successful and more profitable in your venture and your business by leaning into social responsibility and environmental stewardship. So looking at those aspects of social and environmental, letting them come into your business and your decision making, and being more popular, being more efficient, being more profitable, and being more successful as a result of doing that. And I think that's the way that sustainability is evolving in the world now. The three original bubbles, it was all about economy, then a bit about society, and environment was over there somewhere, and they morphed into more of a people, planet, profit thing, three interlocking bubbles. And now when people define sustainability, they put environment as the biggest bubble. That's the planet that we live on. That's what we rely on for our air, our water, our resources. It's what drives society. It's what provides for society, and society then runs an economy. So I think there's been a little bit of a reversal over the last 30 years in how sustainability is defined. It can't be a fob for business as usual. We've got to be more sophisticated now about letting social and environmental into our decisions so that we'll be more profitable and more successful as businesses. And that is playing out. It's playing out in small businesses, it's playing out in golf clubs, it's playing out in major corporations. That's why more people are letting sustainability in as that lens to do business, because by doing that, profitability comes and resilience in business comes on the back of that.
And we'll come back to both the threats and opportunities to golf course businesses. But first, let's just hear a little bit about your story. You're the founder of the GEO Foundation for Sustainable Golf. But take me back. Where did golf come into your life, and where did the environment and sustainability start for you?
Well, I've always been into golf. I think from the age of 4, I started playing golf. It was a pretty typical Scottish upbringing. A grandfather that gave you a golf club, or a father that gave you a golf club, a grandmother that passed on a golf club. So I played an increasing amount of golf, as a young boy, and then as a teenager. Really, really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the intergenerational time that people talk about. I really enjoyed the friendship and the time with pals through those sort of early years. And yeah, I just thought golf is a fantastic recreation. It was a fantastic pastime. I quite enjoyed the competitive side. I wasn't very good to thrive in that area, but
and what sort of golf course was this? Where were you playing golf when you were young?
This is Brumenau Golf Club. It's a fairly typical golf club, good cross-section of people, a sort of a working community club, ex-mining community around sort of Dalkeith, Bonnyrigg, south of Scotland, south of Edinburgh.
And you do find these golf courses in Scotland as well, often just outside a village or outside a town, and they're not high-end private golf clubs. They're golf for everyone, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah, by today's standards, it will have evolved a lot in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and more women and families into the game. But it was a great amenity for local people, and it was very welcoming and warm. And it was also a great place to learn and to meet people from different backgrounds and different generations and spend time with them. And I just like being outside as well. Played rugby and cricket and other sports and things. So I just also enjoyed the sporting aspect, and it was a nice landscape in the green belt of Edinburgh.
And were you aware of that? Did it give you a feeling? You've mentioned one of the motivations there, competition. But did the environment come into your kind of feelings? The sense of outdoor, fresh air, the green space around you. Was that a conscious thought at that age?
I think I was open to it. I don't think I was particularly strong environmental activist or anything as a youngster. I remember there was a fantastic cedar tree at the fourth green, and everybody used to complain about it because the green wasn't in great condition. I used to think that's a fantastic tree. You know, what a beautiful bit of sort of natural architecture it was. And then old walls and things. I do remember that part of like looking at the golf course, not just from the speed of the greens or the smooth of the greens, but just the ambience of the whole place and what was happening around the course with house building and all of those sorts of things. So I think I was aware of things that then have picked up as part of a profession, but mostly it was just about fun and recreation and good times and probably getting out from under my feet, under my parents' feet over the summer, actually.
Well, yes, and some of us did. We were just almost pushed out the door, weren't we?
Yeah.
And you go and spend the day at the golf course, which was a great thing. It was a really good thing. So when did the environment come into your life? I mean, you were at university at St Andrews, so you were surrounded by golf first and foremost, I guess.
I was delighted by that. Yeah, no, that was fantastic, and yeah, I was excited about studying at the home of golf. And
what were you studying?
So I set off to study economics and accounting, and after the first 6 weeks, I think it was, I thought that's not really going to satisfy me. So I switched to geography and sustainable development, and I think that was probably it. Early field trips and things, starting to get under the skin of what was happening in a bit of geology, a bit of hydrology. We did a fantastic course called The Growing Awareness of Landscape, and it was about how people over time have got to appreciate, understand, and develop different landscapes, like the Romantic movement and William Gilpin and people, the sort of landscape garden movement, things like that. So I enjoyed the social side of geography a lot, and how people and the environment come together and how they live together and what those mutual dependencies were. So I remember that from the course, from a sort of theoretical side, and then the field trips to Tatra Mountains in Poland and things like that. You see people working in their landscape, and it's a real eye opener. I think that was when some of that sort of internationality of how different cultures and different people live in their environment differently in different parts of the world, that really came together. And then after university, what really sort of cemented that, I think, was a trip to Australia. So that sort of just that prevalence of cultural heritage and natural beauty. But then, the signs up about we've got desertification going on across this, south of Australia at a massive scale. What's causing that? So that really piqued my international interest in what was happening socially and environmentally around the world. And then I came back to Scotland after Australia, did a couple of rather unusual jobs for a while before stumbling into golf. I had the opportunity in 1996, Scottish Golf Union became the first, watch my facts here, because the USJ were investing heavily in research and other programs at the time, but I think it was the first National Golf Association to appoint a full-time dedicated environmental manager for the Golf Union. So I got that job, and I spent, probably 12 years, 10 years it was, traveling across Scotland, working on grassroots facilities, some golf developments, including a couple of controversial ones, and some light tournament work. And that was kind of early, okay, there's clubs, there's developments, there's tournaments, there's associations. So starting to sort of see the industry, different groups within the industry, and them having sustainability needs and opportunities. So I did that. Whilst I was working with Scottish Golf Union, there was a growing international network of sustainability specialists. I was kind of one of the early group members of that group. USJ, RNA, European Golf Association, STERF, a few people who are still around actually and have been around for a while working, pretty much dedicating their careers to golf and sustainability in different ways. We were coming together maybe twice a year, mostly in person actually, conferences and seminars and webinars, mostly in continental Europe. And out of that, the ideas for the foundation started to sort of emerge, and some key people came together. And then I was given the opportunity to step in and found the foundation and get this phase of work up and running.
So that's, I mean, that's a great summary of the kind of the pathway with the jobs. But this was obviously something important to you as well. This is not just a job. You obviously felt something. You felt that there was an opportunity, but this was important, something you wanted to do as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always felt I've been a bit too busy to think about that, actually, Gary. But yes, it felt important for golf. I mean, it's a great game, and I've a huge passion for golf as a sport, and you can see what it does for people and communities and nature around the world. So it definitely felt like something important for golf, and regulation and reputation and costs of resources and pressure on land. I mean, even in the mid 1990s, you could see those things starting to rumble away and emerge. So you sort of think, well, golf's going to need to be at the forefront of this in order to succeed, to keep succeeding and to keep growing and developing. I was a wee bit concerned about some of the sort of occasionally golf developments would be in the media for the wrong reasons. And to be honest, I sort of used to scratch my head a little bit and think, what are those projects missing? Why are people frustrated with that golf development? What could be, is it their frustration that's unreasonable, or could something have been done differently in that golf project? So I remember analysing that a bit and thinking, this is going to be important for golf. And then from the nature side, yeah, I mean, I just got more and more deeply involved in looking at trends in climate and resources and nature and communities and people's interaction with nature and things, and just sustainable development as a whole. So that became that's something that as I get older, I seem to just become more passionate about, actually.
And interesting, what you're talking about there is perception, because the external perception of golf, and Syngenta has looked at this with kind of social listening projects as well, is that there is a highly negative perception about golf in relation to sustainability. People think golf courses are damaging to the environment, and I guess what you're doing with the foundation is really helping golf courses demonstrate their value. Their wider value, but not just to the environment, but to to people as well.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, the foundation, our culture at the organisation is like that of a caddy, like maybe a Scottish caddy, where we're absolutely committed to helping the game succeed. That's what drives us as a group of people. I mean, it started off as me. We're now 18 people. A fantastic range of people who also love golf and passionate about sustainability, different expertise, whether it's data or communications or program development or science, different things that you need. And I think all of us at the foundation now are driven by the idea that we could help different parts of golf to accelerate their journeys so that they are more resilient. Their part of the game is safeguarded. They're in a stronger position. But through that, there's going to be more nature restored, more efficient use of resources, less carbon emissions, even more social value given out by the game in the places and the landscapes that the game plays. And that's our sort of internal drive, is to help others succeed through sustainability by, as I said at the start, leaning into social environmental issues to make the game stronger and healthier. And that's what it takes in the modern world, I think. I mean, nobody's going to sort of look at a sport and start applauding that, oh, you're great. You've got to earn that now in sustainability. You've got to go out there and tell people what you're doing, what your commitments are, what your actions are that you're undertaking, and what results you're generating. And when you do that, people will start to respond. And we're already seeing that where golf starts to walk the walk and talk the talk well in sustainability. I don't think we've had a bad reaction. I don't think it's not impossible to turn around unfair regulation to fair regulation. It's not impossible to turn around environmental activism like drilling holes and pouring concrete into golf courses into at least a tacit support for the game. It's not impossible to tip the balance on social media from negative to positive, or in environmental mainstream media. These things are all possible. It's not going to be impossible to get to, be careful here, but to get to net zero emissions really, really hard, and certain aspects of golf significantly hard, like around events and travel and transport. It's not going to be impossible for golf to become a net positive in watersheds, in very difficult in certain contexts, but in vast majority of places. It's not going to be possible for golf to hit zero waste or to become a really positive part of the circular economy. So, it's all the things that, the sport sometimes gets criticized for. It's not impossible to get on the other side of that. And not just to get on the other side of it from a defensive point of view, but to make sure that golf is seen as the leading sport in sustainability and a really genuine contributor to global challenges, some of the defining issues of our time.
Well, let's talk about, that. Let's talk about some of the solutions and some of the practical things that golf courses can do, because it sometimes can appear overwhelming. Well, what is sustainable? How can we be part of it? What do we need to do? And actually, it's often smaller, demonstrable actions that get the ball rolling. But let's just on that global aspect, just for a moment. 39,000 golf courses worldwide, size equivalent to the area of Belgium, and perhaps up to 50% of that area is kind of native or is wild areas. So golf courses have a huge land resource there, and things can be done with that land. There's the in-play areas, but there's the out-of-play areas. So let's just talk about that, and let's start with nature, because nature is so important. Now, sometimes we feel like we should be interested in nature, that it should be nice to look at nature in and around golf courses. But why does nature matter?
Yeah, great question. And golf has this fantastic, it has a fantastic contribution in nature in so many ways already. There is space for it to do even more, and we all need to do more to restore nature. It's an important thing for any sector, any business, any landowner, agriculture, fisheries and oceans and things. So it's important we should be celebrating what golf does in nature. I'll get some practical examples, but we should also be trying to drive further as well, because we need to. The stats on biodiversity decline, extinction rates, and things like that are not good. I think to your question about why nature is important, our awareness now of how the quality of our environment affects the quality of our lives, just at a very local level, is much, much higher than it's ever been before. Our desire and our ability, not to live in environments that are, superheated, concrete, impermeable surfaces, flooding, droughting. Golf is the antidote to that. These are spaces that, with the kind of stewardship that the vast majority of greenkeepers and clubs, want to see, and certainly from a greenkeeper point of view, want to roll out. They want the space to play, I think, in terms of letting nature into courses. The opportunities that a golf course has. Fife Golf Trust, from a municipal point of view, just very close by here. Minthus Hills. Royal Troon, most of the Open Championship venues at the R&A do a great job of sort of celebrating the nature and the naturalness of those venues. They show that golf is this space in a pressured environment that provides this recreation for golfers, probably a lot of other people round about the edges, and then within the site, semi-rough, deep rough, roughs of different types, different grasslands of different types, different scrub habitats, heather habitats, very increasingly rare and protected, different types of woodland habitats, different edges, different patch sizes, different corridors. When you break that down on an ecological level, that's why when you study a golf course, you get greater habitat diversity, greater species diversity, probably than most other land uses round about. So, golf has that land asset on the doorstep of communities, and with a little bit of tweaking and a little bit of communicating, I think the world can see that golf is, living landscapes, sporting green spaces that provide for nature and provide for communities in a whole host of ways that most communities won't understand at the minute.
Just one aspect of nature that sometimes talked about in particularly in the outer play areas, pollinating insects. Again, this comes back to the point about why nature is important, because pollination in itself is vital to life, vital to our life, to human life.
Yeah, absolutely. And those insects and the habitats that they depend upon have become, fewer and further between, under a lot of pressure. So, to have spaces on a golf course which are dedicated to pollinating plants, dedicated to pollinators, and actually to go out on golf courses and to see how rich and vibrant those habitats are and what they're doing is really important, inspirational, and sometimes it's quite unique in that area that it's happening. It might not be happening in other places. There's the Nectar Network in South Ayrshire, again in Scotland, on the other side of the country, but that is doing fantastic work across a whole cluster of golf courses, all working on pollination. And pollination, you're right, it's a fundamental requirement for us as humans for a healthy, functioning ecosystem.
And directly connected to food production.
Directly connected to food production, absolutely. Which actually, we are seeing some nice crossover now in golf courses. There's a few, growing number actually, who are, not just looking at nature out in the golf course, but also looking at food production in and around the clubhouse, so growing their own and things like that. We're seeing more examples of honeybees being positioned in and around golf courses to produce honey that the club then goes on to provide, on the tables or sells to members or, sells into the community. So looking after nature and then doing something tangible with that in a way that benefits, creates food, creates a product, benefits the brand of the club. Those things we think are really exciting. You're doing something here, the two things are connected and it benefits in some greater way. That's how a lot of sustainability thinking is happening. And watersheds and water would be exactly the same kind of sort of joined up thinking, not just where's our water coming from in a silo, how efficient are we in a silo, but looking at your whole position of a golf club in the landscape, in the watershed, and what role can you play in that watershed? Yes, efficiency will be one thing, irrigation systems and precision irrigation will be another, but what are you doing with nature-based solutions? How are you using swales, ditches, attenuation ponds, letting certain areas flood and then dry out? Taking that holistic view of water is similar to nature, looking at the landscape and using that landscape to do something bigger in the watershed. That's a big movement in water conservation, water management, catchment management plans and watershed management. And again, golf courses with a bit of holistic thinking and really position themselves well in there.
Let's just talk a little bit more about water because it is just so important and it's a pressing issue for many golf courses. The efficient use of water, conserving water, but also water capture as well. What's going on? Give us some examples of golf courses that are doing those things really, really well.
Yeah, I think around the world, the vast majority of golf courses will be thinking about how to cope with wetter and drier conditions, greater extremes, which we're seeing with weather patterns and climate change. And so what we see is, a movement away from, I think, where we used to be with water, which is it's either in a borehole or coming out of a tap or it's in a pond, and that's our supply, and everything else we should get rid of as quickly as possible. It's a liability. And now looking at the landscape and thinking, how can we attenuate and detain water that's surplus to flood water, drainage water at the moment, and then moving it into summer use. There are literally dozens of golf courses who are getting permits to store water, investing actually quite significantly in water reservoirs. But they're not just doing that by themselves. They're looking at changing the land drainage to supply those reservoirs. They're looking at changing the topography of some fairways to shed water so that they can keep it somewhere else. They're looking at car park rainwater harvesting and storage. They're looking at grey water coming out of the clubhouse. They're looking at other sources of industrial wastewater that they might be able to tap into. In some increasing parts of Europe, particularly, things like treated sewage effluent is going to become more prominent, almost further north than it currently is. So
these are opportunities actually for golf courses as much as they are a threat.
They are. I think we would call these wise investments. They used to be in the world of sustainability. People would sometimes pan them off as just the cost of sustainability. And I think it's a great indicator actually of where we're getting to, which is people see a sustainable investment is a wise investment because it's really going to future-proof the business. But the other opportunity there, and again, we've seen grants. I mean, another small Scottish example was Auchterarder, but we've seen, numerous golf courses tap into grants, and I think this is a big opportunity in the future. When they do that water resource management well in the way kind of outlined, it's not just that they're an opportunity for them as a business or safeguarding their business, it's a societal benefit that they're creating. They're doing something good for the housing estate or the commercial estate down the road that won't, or downstream, that won't flood. So that's where you can start to tap into innovation grants and other sort of infrastructural grants and funding, more like public-private partnership type things. If the project is at a large scale. And I think that's on big issues like water. So it's micro, very much about sprinkler heads and detail, but it's also macro, thinking about what can we do here that's going to do something for the club and the community over the next 30 years. Some of those could be quite big projects, but they could be very investable from public and other funds.
So we've talked about fostering nature, we've talked about conserving resources, in particular water there, but you started to touch then on a third really, really important point, which is about communities and golf being part of local communities, because it's often the case, and I think golf is perhaps guilty of it, kind of almost being behind the high hedgerow or behind the gate, shut off. And perhaps that's why there's a perception sometimes that golf is elitist or it's exclusive. But actually there's a need now, is there not to, in terms of sustainability, to demonstrate what we're doing, but actually to be positive partners with our communities. How do golf courses go about that?
Yeah, I think that is a hugely important area and a massive opportunity for golf. And I think, Syngenta and the Love Golf programs and things, increasing the spread of participation and access to the game, to play the game, is one thing. But if you look at a golf facility and you look at the land for, I don't know, mountain biking, some walking, some other use, clubhouses that can be hubs as well as clubs. If you look at the sort of charitable giving, and the way that that's evolved, not just at the club level, but at the tournament level, from human health to social projects, food banks, creches, nurseries, whatever it might be. And now environment is factoring more strongly into charitable giving, which again, another indicator of how companies or even grassroots clubs are seeing the environment is important to us, it's important to our local community. We could collaborate, we could help do something. I mean, North Berwick here, the golf club has an annual charitable fund that is now going into a range of social and environmental projects and coastal management and things. So charity is another way, and then education and engagement.
So you mentioned about STEM learning earlier, the opportunity to get children onto golf courses at a young age, not just to try golf, to play the game, but actually just to be in the golf course environment and to understand. One of our previous guests on Growing Golf talked about how perceptions are formed at an early age. And therefore, it's really, really important, if golf is to engage with communities, that people come and see. And having children come and learn about the environment and the environmental value of golf courses is a great opportunity for clubs.
It is. And it's not that hard to do, for the value that comes from it and the value to the children, but also the reputational value for the club. I think First Green and that sort of STEM or STEAM education that's built into that is a fantastic initiative. It's great to see it expand. We're also working on a environmental education toolkit for younger children, for primary school aged children. It's a project that we kicked off with Wales Golf, but it will be shared and extended more widely into next year. And that's just a simple toolkit about how teachers and greenkeepers and the club can come together with some simple projects. Golf courses, an outdoor classroom, and then on the back of that, the children and the teachers, people in the community are starting to get a feel for a club that is interested in a range of other things, not just the playing of the sport. So I think those things are very valuable in their own right, but they're also very symbolic of a golf club that cares about its community and the people in the community. And there is huge movement in sustainable communities around the world. I mean, it's almost invisible, actually. It's not the most high-profile part of the sustainability movement, but you don't have to go far from a golf club to find a nursery, a primary school, a preschool, a high school that's an eco school, a community group, a Keep, London Beautiful group. They are everywhere, clusters of people and communities that care about the environment because they care about the future of the community. And because golf has land, and because golf can be seen to be influential, and it is, I mean, maybe 1,000 members, it can do things that are catalytic in the community, and that is very, very well received by the community. We've seen a couple of examples where golf clubs have held almost like innovation days for local businesses. They get some sponsorship out of it. Tea times, probably no more members, but the message is that the golf club wants to be a hub for some innovation around low carbon, nature restoration, zero waste, water efficiency, healthy, active lifestyles. Start tagging some of these messages onto what people see as a golf club, and they re-see it.
We spoke during lockdown as we were seeing pent-up demand for people to get access to green spaces. And that's played out with the huge demand that there's been for golf, record levels of demand. But are we getting the messaging right for golf? Are we remembering some of the motivations, some of the reasons people want to come to golf as a result of the pandemic? Are we getting the messaging right? Are we reflecting what they want out of golf?
I think it's a great question, actually, and I'm not sure as a blanket statement just how far golf has gone with that sort of nature-based social recreation messaging that was so welcome to people during COVID. It's not something you could take for granted that golfers or potential golfers are going to continue to feel like that. So there is definitely a space there, and we see it with other sectors, tourism sectors and lifestyle sectors, where they're getting quite clever about building nature and building sustainability and building responsibility and building care into their marketing. There are some golf facilities that are doing that, and I think generally they're pioneering. They're testing the water as well. That nobody's quite sure how this works until you start to sort of put it into brochures, put it on your website. Try and connect that nature-based experience and maybe some other recreational function that the golf course has with the product you're trying to sell. Flexible golf, you play, somebody else does something, the clubhouse is welcoming. So that relationship between, again, environment and product in the golfing world and how you market and message that, I'd say it seems like it's important to do, to remind people that golf gives you this fantastic social, healthy, recreational, nature-based experience that's got flexibility wrapped up in the product. That feels important going forward. From our point of view with the clubs that we work with, we're seeing more of that. It's encouraging. We're actually writing communications toolkits, putting them into the program free of charge, putting it into the marketing guide for GEO certified for the label, to try and help golf clubs tell that story that, when you come and play here, here's the flexible options that you've got. But please know it's an experience that's rich in nature, that's got other activities that you can get involved in. And I mean, even to the point of things like green fees. There's 20 pence extra on your green fee. It goes into our golf club's community fund. That's going out into not just social, but also environmental projects. Please feel better about your round today. There's lots of different ways that people are bringing sustainability into consumer contact, and that's a place that probably golf's got more to learn. But we're really excited to see that, because there's two sides to sustainability typically. One is the producer creates a more sustainable product, and the other side is the consumer wants a more sustainable product. So I think golf's primarily been working on the producer side over the last 15, 20 years. So it would be nice on the back of COVID and seeing that test case that came around through COVID to see golf lean into that consumer-facing side more.
So for golf course businesses who are perhaps listening to this, they want to get involved, they know they need to be involved, but they're kind of concerned that it's too big, there's too much to do, and there's lots of other things that they need to be doing first. How do they make those first steps? And can there be simple first steps as well?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of this does start with simple first steps, but those simple first steps could be a particular project. I mean, it could be changing out your plastic water bottles, it could be looking at your sprinkler heads, it could be doing a walk of the course and seeing whether you can find a few extra square meters of semi-rough that could become rough front left of most tees. There's a hint. um, so, it could be simple, practical projects. And actually on sustainable.golf, we've got that open source hub of sustainable golf highlights. I think there's probably 2,500 simple, practical stories that any superintendent or course manager, general manager could look at just to get some simple ideas. And that's good. It gets you underway. In parallel to that, it's always good to have a plan to know what your sort of broader strengths and weaknesses are in your direction of travel. So that's where the foundation has developed these non-commercial, actually primarily free and open source programs. So there's a pathway for sustainable golf clubs. It starts off with a Sustainable Golf Pledge. It moves into the software-based on-course program that helps clubs track their practices and data. They get a scorecard each year on the back of the data they put in. What they get, back out, they can see where they're doing well, where there's room for opportunity. It comes with a carbon analysis and carbon footprint as well. And then that leads into sort of developing a bigger action plan. In those action plans, there's no cost activities. Actually, there's cost saving activities, no cost activities, low cost activities, and wise investments. So, between doing one or two practical things, there's definitely lots of ideas out there. But where we see the biggest success for a golf club is where they make this more integral to their overall business decision making. And that's what that pathway helps do. It helps a club move from thinking about this as optional to making it more integrated and internal. And that's where clubs start to recognize that we're doing most of the industry best practices here. We're doing some nice projects. What's next for us? And that's when it gets exciting. They get creative. They think bigger. And that's where some of those community projects, nature restoration projects, watershed projects, green energy production and selling, solar panel projects, partnerships with their sponsors, those sorts of things start to come together in a bigger way. So that's the definitely start small, but I would say think big. And our pathways are designed to help people accelerate from starting small to thinking big.
And in your experience working with clubs, who undertakes this work? Who takes the lead at clubs, and who do you need to be involved? Now, the course manager and the greenkeeping team often are the experts in terms of they're the closest on the ground, but who else can join together to make these things happen at a club or a course?
Yeah, it works best when it's a full facility approach. But within that, the superintendent, the course manager is going to be vital, possibly the single most important person. And actually, they should be recognized for that. I mean, I think for a while, course managers and greenkeepers have probably had sustainability passed on to them as if it's maybe agronomy or it's confused as something else. But actually, it has become a much bigger business-wide play for golf clubs. So I think the superintendent being respected, recognized, given the chance and the resources to lean into a lot of this, particularly the technical and scientific side. But then the general manager, we see quite a lot of assistant general managers getting involved or being asked to get involved because it's part of their professional development. We're seeing a lot more PGA professionals. They're asking questions about the supply chain into their shop. They're being asked by golfers quite often at the sort of shop window of the club. Food and beverage, there's a lot of sustainable food, and sort of different meal options and sourcing of food. So quite a lot in catering. And then definitely less so, but important, are anybody who's involved in putting together the marketing and communications for the club and starting to weave some of this narrative into that. So it's a team effort. We try with our programs to break that up into golf course and clubhouse and different sort of functions of the club so that people can see which area they can most lean into. But there's a lot of interdependencies across those things. I mean, the superintendent wants to do something on water or agronomy or nature, then obviously the general manager has a role to play budget-wise or helping get member approvals and things like that. So I think if we can help a golf club get sustainability as part of their sort of North Star, and then get those key sort of management team to realize if we don't do this, it's a threat. If we do it, it's a new opportunity for the club in a whole range of exciting ways. So let's start to think about our position, make a plan from small to aspirational, and then let's each of us start to work through some actually very practical steps is what it boils down to at the end of the day.
And another place for inspiration and somewhere that you're involved in as well is tournaments. We're seeing tournaments getting really quite savvy and really quite good at what they're doing in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, I mean that the grassroots of the game, 39,000 facilities, is obviously hugely important from a sustainability perspective. And actually, by the way, that's also where the authentic voice of golf most comes from. One of the best ways to change the image of the game is to have 39,000 champions of sustainability in 39,000 different locations around the world. That's the sort of that bottom up communication is really important. But at the other end, you've got the very high profile, televised professional tournaments. So they're also important. I mean, they have carbon emissions, they consume resources. There's things that they need to drive down from an environmental and sustainability point of view. But there's a lot that they can drive up on the awareness raising, the behavior change, the charitable giving, the B2B innovation that can happen. So golf tournaments are a bit like that. Drive down these things, drive up these things. It's a bit like the graphic equalizer sort of the olden days. But whether it's the DP World Tour, PGA Tour, Ladies European Tour, LPGA, I mean, those four tours are moving forward on this really well. Individual tournaments like the Alfred Dunhill Links Championship, Vegas Masters, Volvo China Open. I mean, tournaments around the world are Scandinavian Mixed Masters, Scottish Open, the AIG Women's Open. Individual events also picking up the baton. So that's important for those events because government funding and sponsorship funding is now tied to ESG and social and corporate responsibility. But it's great for the game because then they become sort of lighthouses and beacons to get messages out in a different way to the grassroots clubs, out to fans and out through the sort of general media. So you've got two contrasting elements of golf, tournaments and grassroots, and they both have a really big role to play.
Talking of lighthouses and beacons, here we are in North Berwick, and it's been really interesting speaking to you, Jonathan, taking the seeds of sustainability in the home of golf and spreading them around the world. And it's been really interesting chatting to you. Jonathan Smith, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.
I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do tell us your thoughts. You can comment, ask a question, or rate the episode. You'll find more stories, insights, and case studies at syngentagolf.com. Until next time, goodbye.